So today we're talking about desire. And it has a lot of different associations and connotations for people. Desire normally, I feel, brings up this idea of what we're lured by, what we're pulled toward. Something that we want in order to take or consume. I always love to take terms and flip the definitions, figure out a way to dive into it and see it differently. And I want to do that with desire. I want to ask the question, where desire comes from? How do we get to define desire? How does it drive us, consciously and unconsciously? And to jump into that, I do have one little thing that's scripted because last night I got really inspired and I started to write out a spoken word, which is not easy in silence. So I'm going to read it out to you guys now. We'll see how it actually sounds out loud. Why am I to deny the nourishment of another's touch, affection, love? Because you desire to be the only one to give and receive from me. Or is it that when I invite and welcome it from others, you feel what you have given then is not enough? While I wish my words and honesty were plenty, the power does not lay with me to give you the confidence of knowing you have no cup to fill to be enough. You began as enough. You will end as enough. In this very moment, you are enough if you own it. You see, you must be enough for you, not me. I feel desire is often about us trying to fill something to be enough again. Who am I to judge your capacity? I've only just begun to uncover the immensity of all the stars that join to form the cells of your body, of all the whispers of windblown leaves that make your thoughts. And truth be told, I've only had glimpses of your golden heart still locked away safe in its fortress beyond the moats and gates. We put up all sorts of protections. So how, I ask, could I ever be expected to say, yes, you are enough for me, when your wholeness I have yet to see? In my own cup I must fill independently. But let's ask the real question here. Why have you given away the power of who decides your worthiness? Whether that be to a person or any desired possession, thing, place, experience. You, my dear, in so many ways, by just showing up like you all have here, have fulfilled your purpose. Your value, worth is priceless, not tallied in percents and numbers, figures and forms of achievement. You are enough in this moment because you decide so. And then, desire is no longer to control, possess, compare, repress. Desire becomes pure. It is just your open heart sharing and receiving without conquest, without process, without condition of unrest. Now I notice my own triggers surface. Anger and frustration. I know for some, desire is distraction, a way to take and fill an empty plate. But for me, and I hope for all of you, desire is reception. Our plates are full with our own presence. We have bravely fought to open, to receive again without judgment. So please don't shame yourself for closing or not closing. Don't make me or yourself an enemy for staying full in your energy. Making others small and meek is not going to give you the safety that you seek. In the past, I used to let the fears and desires of others shut the faucet of my love. So those waters of expression, connection, transformation no longer flowed but sat stagnant in repose, and the stench rose until that love, once pure and innocent, now found expression through darker channels of perversion. Do you ever notice that when you repress something, you push it down, desires especially, because of judgments of your own mind and stories, it finds a way to come back out, but it's never as clean anymore. It's through deception, manipulation, secrecy. Today I choose different. I will not let my light dim by the shadow of your doubt, for you are not doubting me, although your mind may say so. It is yourself you doubt. I know because I've been there, am there, we all are. Whispering that question deep inside, am I enough? Am I special? It's not by some magical thought or insight we suddenly feel whole, confident, and alive. We have spent years burying ourselves in lies. The stories we told ourselves to protect ourselves, but instead we hid ourselves. Desire, when expressed openly without judgment, without shame, without reprieve or even name, begins to uncover again our authentic nature, which is to connect. That's it. To connect. Connection is all that life desires, and in that moment of contact, it sends a ripple through existence. So release the binds you hold as condition upon the ones from whom you seek validation, for they are but a reflection of the restraints you have tied around your own hands. Be free. Be free. Be free. Freedom is not to go and fulfill every thought and fantasy. Don't mix lust and temptation with true purpose. Freedom is to trust expression. Expression is connection. Desire seeks this and only this, to connect. For me, as I've explored this topic of desire, what I've started to realize is on the surface it shows up as something where we're trying to fulfill or fill our cup, right? There's a part of us that start to look inside and say, oh, it's not enough. And so we start to go outside and reach and grab and take to try to fill in. What if we flip desire and instead we said, you know, I'm going to first go in, see what's there. And as I do, and then I sit within that womb of self, maybe I start to realize there's more there than at first I perceived. And I share this often in my other talks. When we do look inside, for most of us, it's not going to be enough. And it's not because who you are isn't enough. It's because you are divided, separated. You have set yourself up where there's only a fraction of who you are deep inside, and then the rest of you is outside, searching, seeking, validating, justifying, proving, and protecting you. And so all your energy and all your being is on the outside of who you are, in the walls. So of course, when you look inside, you don't see enough. So first go inside with acceptance, no judgment, no threat. That's important. And when I say threat, some of you might think, why would I go inside with a dagger and a sword to try to cut something open? We do it all the time. But even more subtle than that, we go inside to change something. Does that resonate with you guys? That you found yourself on this path of self-discovery or transformation because somewhere along the path you thought, there's something I don't like and I want to change it. See, that's a threat to the person you're going in to meet. So instead, go in without an agenda, but just a curiosity and interest, and then sit there. And because there's no longer a threat, there's no reason to protect either. And all those fences and gates and closed doors and windows with their curtains shut, they start to open again. You put down the defenses. And all that energy that was going into those protections comes back into you, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I feel so much better, alive and whole again and complete. And then you start to express into the world in this way that naturally creates connection. And that's the flip of desire, where it's of taking, of trying to get something, and desire that is pulling you forward with inspiration. The original Buddha, Gautama Sakyas, he says the Four Noble Truths. Have any of you heard these before? The Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. So the first one is that all life is dukkha, suffering. And there's a misconception about that because people go, the Buddha was very pessimistic and negative. But he was speaking a very specific kind of suffering. It's a suffering of being attached to one place while you're actually in another. It's separation, division again. That is dukkha. That's the suffering. It's to be divided. And the second noble truth was that this division, this dukkha and suffering was caused by desire. So again, a misconception. People read that and they go, need to be very austere, have no desires, no wants, nothing. Be okay with whatever I have, my one grain of rice. But he spoke of two types of desires. One that was quite welcome, the other was the cause. Tanha and chanda. Tanha means the clinging desire. It's attachment. It's when something has come into your life and then it goes, but you don't let it. Then you suffer. because you are going against reality. That is a fight you will not win. The other chanda was desire of compassion, of self-improvement, of self-discovery, of love. It was things that you wanted to give into the world to connect to the world. That's very different. And so it brings for me this thought. It brings to me this thought of what's the difference then between attachment and connection, which I just shared is what I believe desire is really all about. Connection is what happens when we take down all the divisions. It's automatic, it's natural, it's organic. You don't have to do something, take something, be something, prove something to do it. You just are it the moment you stop isolating, the moment you're no longer putting up a wall. Attachment, on the other hand, is almost like you're trying to stay in the safety of your bubble, in your comfort zone, but you seek and you really desire that connection. And so you create it out of controls and manipulation, ways of possession. That's attachment. How do we look at these parts of ourselves, whether they be our defenses or our limiting beliefs, with compassion, with gentility, softly? I did my first year in silence back in 2012. When I came out of it, I had a lot of inspiration to share. And one of the things that I started to do was I would rush forward to people and be like, I have the truth for you. Because I had seen it in the void of silence. That was a mistake. And the problem with that is that, you see, we're all in this umbrella society, and I call it that because when it rains, what do most people do? You cover up, right? You try to seek shelter. Some of you dance in the rain, and that's great. But for the majority of people, you put up an umbrella because you don't want to get all wet. But all the rain is doing is it's washing away the facade, the mask, and all the stuff that's built up to reveal what's been there the whole time. But we're walking around with these umbrellas in our own little realities. And what I had done in my own practice of silence and other things was I had put my umbrella down and I suddenly saw something new. It was my reality still, but it was something new. And I thought, oh my God, this is the truth. I have to go tell people. And I ran to another umbrella and I was like, give me that. You don't need it. Give it to me. Give it to me. They freaked out. Because the umbrella is our identity, our existence, everything that we believe allows us to be. It's your reality. Can you imagine somebody trying to take that away? Yet we do it all the time, to each other and to ourselves. We're trying to strip away something because we think that we have found something better. And so when we look inside and we start to see things, if we go in and we have a judgment about it, good or bad, any kind of evaluation, immediately we're going to have a solution to that we believe is better. And in that moment, we've become a threat to ourselves. And we will close up even tighter. So the suggestion, what I ended up learning myself with this whole umbrella thing, was to first put mine down. That's your ego. You put it down. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to be a student. Be willing to learn something. So you put that down and you don't take anything personal. And then you go to somebody, and with nothing but interest, you step underneath their umbrella. And you look around. You go, oh, it's nice in here. I would have done that different, but that's really nice. And just be curious. You're not there to change anything because you don't know what to change. You're not in their world. You're not even in your own. But step in there to find out what's going on. I had a beautiful conversation just earlier today with a friend, and we were talking about communication, and what came through was that the very first thing that has to happen is you have to ask a question and then listen. How many of you, when you think of communication, you think of what you're telling each other? That comes way down the line. First, ask and listen. Be curious. So as you look into that stuff, whatever is there, just be curious. And that alone gives it the space to blossom, to express, to open. And sometimes it's something that you get to keep, and other times by you being open, by you not trying to control or maintain something or change something, what was there and no longer serving you leaves on its own accord. I spoke earlier of how when we repress desire, when we push it down, try to avoid it, judge it, that it persists. and often comes back in ways that are unconscious. And that makes sense. Because if something consciously comes forward, maybe it's something as simple as you see an attractive person and you're like, oh. And then your mind, some critical factor goes, no, you're not supposed to think this way. Put it down, stop thinking this. And so then you push it down into your unconscious, your subconscious mind. I'll give you guys a little tip about the way the brain works. About 9% of your capacity to think is conscious. The other 91% is unconscious. Which do you think is stronger influencing you? The unconscious. So that means when you put all these desires down deep into that subconscious section of your mind and your brain, all of a sudden there's 91%, a majority working against you. And it's really smart. And this is why when we resist desires, it comes back up in a more subtle, secret, deceptive way that often we don't even notice until it's happened. Not all desires are going to be achieved. So how do we not push down the ones that aren't? This is where we come into the idea of attachment. Let's say you have this strong, strong desire to call and say hi to somebody. So you get really excited. You make a whole story about it, of all the things you're going to share with them. And then you dial the number, or you type it in, or you press the speed dial because it's your best friend, and you're like, and you get the voicemail. Now in that moment, your desire was not completed. Now if you stay there, just listening to the dead silence of the voicemail, for the next 20 minutes until your friend is available, that's attachment. And that's what we are doing all the time. The expression of our desire is simply to take that first step toward it and then to reassess and say, okay, what do I desire now? Because remember, desire is about connection. It's not about achievement. Achievement comes back to proving and validating and bringing something into yourself, whereas desire is about expressing something out. And it can seriously be as simple as just saying it. In the example I gave earlier of if you see somebody that's attractive, can you imagine how much time and energy you would save if instead of seeing that person and then thinking to yourself, oh my God, I'd really like to meet them, I want to say hi to them, I want to talk to them, and then you go home and you journal all about them and the family you're going to have in 10 years, and you haven't even said hi. Can you imagine all the energy you would save if instead, in the very moment that the feeling came up in you as an expression wanting to be shared, you said, hi, you're beautiful. And that was it. Nothing else has to come from it. See, that's maybe where the mistake is made about desire, is we think that it has to lead to something. It doesn't. It just needs to be expressed. I have a friend who, he called this phenomenon the upgrade game. It's when we're always trying to lead to something. And I know in social relations we do it all the time, sometimes consciously, most of the time unconsciously. Where it might have begun as just that desire of like, oh, I just want to say hi. But that unconscious desire that you repressed like 3 years ago about having some sexual fantasy, that's still there. And so when you go to say hi, it comes up and it's like, ooh, opportunity. And it starts manipulating your words, your phrases, your gestures, your body language, without you even knowing it. And all of a sudden, you're at their home and you're like, what am I doing here? But I want it. So the upgrade game is when we lose the presence of this moment because we're starting to try to work toward an agenda of the next. In that very instance, you've lost the value of all of it. Can you truly be just present right now, right here, without it needing to go anywhere? I remember as a kid, I used to love to tell stories. I love telling stories still. But I would never have a point. Now I sometimes have a point. And because I would never have a point, I'd be sharing this story with my family, with my mom, my sister mostly, and I'd be super excited as this little kid. I'm making like all these voices with it. I'm like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this, and then this, and then this. And I'd go on for like an hour. Finally, my mom or my sister would say, okay, but what's the point? And I go, I don't know. For some reason, we're always looking for a point. We're looking for a destination instead of just enjoying the journey in a direction. There's not any need for a point. There's just now. Maybe the only point is fulfillment, but not fulfillment of self, but fulfillment of the desire that has come up in you in that moment. For that moment. I'll say that again. It's an expression of the desire that comes up in you in that moment for that moment. In the very next moment, it no longer applies because everything is changing moment by moment. It's like, have you ever been in a crowd and somebody says something and then you think of something really funny? You're like, oh, I'm going to say this, but there's no space for it yet. So the moment passes. And then you finally say it like 2 minutes later and everybody's like, what? We hold on to an experience of this moment and try to carry it into this moment. That is attachment. That's the desire that the Buddha was talking about. Let go. Because the problem is we are always moving, we are always changing, we are always on a trajectory in some direction. The destination is unknown. And as you're going, every time that you grasp and hold in attachment to something, you're holding there, but you're still moving. And you end up stretching and stretching and stretching until you're so thinned out that you don't know your depth anymore. And you find yourself in just routines and rituals and surface communication where you're saying, hi, how are you? Fine, I'm good. And that's it. And it's not even that you're just trying to save time. You just don't know what to answer because it's stretched over so many other things. A part of you that's still over here is like, well, I'm not so good because this was happening. Another part that's celebrating over here is like, I'm great, I'm ecstatic. Another part that's over here is saying this, and another part over there is saying that. All of them that you have stretched out to an attachment. So a fulfillment of the desire in that moment, which is simply taking the action of expression, could release you from all those attachments because it's already done. And then with curiosity, you step into the next moment to see what rises again to be expressed. As I talk about all these things with desire and, moving out from beneath that umbrella, how do you put it down? How do you find the courage to put the umbrella down? It has to be not so much a calculated effort, because then your mind is already involved, and already because your mind is involved, you're judging and evaluating where you're at, and you're thinking, I'm supposed to be, I should be outside of that umbrella, and that already is trying to change something, therefore you're threatening yourself, and it's like, no, I will not let go of this safety net. But instead, it's about stepping underneath your own umbrella with yourself, and be interested, be curious. You don't have to take the umbrella away to do that. You can do it within the safety of it. And the beauty is that when you do that, that's called awareness. When you step inside, it gets crowded. And all of a sudden the umbrella either has to grow or it just kind of gets knocked down by accident. It's something I love to bring forward is that, we often say you have to get outside your comfort zone to start to really live. That's really scary. I like to say just expand your comfort zone. If you have this much room right now, well, just push this wall out a little bit and take a step that way. Now you're still in the comfort of your own safety, but you've discovered something new. Expand. Makes me think of something that I'd actually say is probably the key insight of this year's silence. So in my first year of silence, my key insight was that nothing about ourselves, our purpose, our passion, our wholeness, our completion can be discovered, because that would be outside of you. But rather, it's all uncovered, because it's inside of you. It's about taking off the layers and removing all the things and stories in the way so that you can see who you've been the whole time. And this year, it's been this idea of expansion and contraction and really looking at identity and roles and how that plays a part in our lives. Because I went into silence this time to really watch my ego, to see where in my speech and words I was saying things to validate or prove or justify an identity of who I wanted you to see. And what I've started to realize is if there is a reaction to the external world, then that means I am externally acting. If there is a response, then I am internally acting. And for that to happen, there has to be an expansion, much like this idea of expanding the comfort zone. What we normally do, though, is to express ourselves out into the world in some role or identity, we step outside of who we really are. That's called our vulnerability. We step outside of it. We say, okay, I'm going to put this away. Nobody gets to see that. Hi, this is who I really am. This nice shield over here and this mask and projection of the vulnerable part. This part you can't hurt. And what I noticed is, as I went silent, because of the silence, I didn't have the shield of words anymore. Because we use our language a lot to protect, to deflect, to move people away from anywhere that we might feel sensitive. And I didn't have that, so all of a sudden everybody was right in my living room. And there was nothing I could do about it but surrender. And then I noticed something else that happened, which was some people get really uncomfortable in silence, around it. Not in themselves, but if they see somebody else like me sitting there silently, because I become a reflective mirror. And I sensed that, and so I started to make myself smaller so as not to give them discomfort. And here's the lesson that I learned that has been the greatest insight, is to grow smaller to connect doesn't work. Even when I say it like that, it makes no sense, does it? But rather in those moments of discomfort, in those moments of awkward connection, rather than growing smaller or retracting or avoiding, what if you were to expand the being of who you are to encompass the whole situation and the other? So that you're not just holding space for them, which often can feel like you're giving up yourself, but you are holding space with you, with them. There's a power in that. So in response to your question, it really is about finding a comfort within the moving out of the comfort as it expands. It's not going to be an effort that you make because then you're pushing the walls, but rather it's going to be you getting so relaxed that you're leaning against the wall and it breaks. Because the only way you could be relaxed is if you felt safe enough, and if you felt safe enough, you don't need protections anymore, so they just dissolve on their own. And then you find yourself in this beautiful field of new blooming flowers and potential and possibilities and opportunities of connection. If you get cold, you go back inside. It's okay. Do I think attachment is innate or learned? I think what we are born with is a sense of connection because that's what we are innately. That is what we are naturally when we don't have these walls up. And so it's not even that we're trying to get back to something, we're just trying to not be holding up all these bricks and walls and shields. They're heavy. But possibly because of conditioning and how we grow up, we create attachments because there's not a certainty that in the next moment you'll have that support, you'll have that connection. And the problem is that as you do that and you start to create more of that pattern, it means more walls go up, more division goes up, and then you feel even more and more distant from that connection and more desperate to get it. Which is why I recommend when I work with coaching clients, I never tell somebody to try to go from the outside in. It doesn't work. Because most of the time the techniques we use for that is, we go, okay, this story isn't working for me. I'm going to remove that story and I'm going to put this one instead. Have you gotten any closer to yourself? No. So instead of doing that, you go right to the very center, to the feeling it's in your body. And this is what I love about desire. Desire is something that comes from inside you. It's not thought, it's not mentalized. Those are fantasies, that's a little different. But desire it's your hunger. And it comes forward naturally without you having to think about it. When you get hungry for lunch or dinner, or even breakfast when you wake, is that something that you had to wake up and be like, I think I'm going to be hungry? No, you just feel it. Feel it. And maybe that's the thing we've lost the most, is how to feel. We've become so busy trying to figure out what the feeling is that we stopped feeling it. So what I'll invite you guys to, because we are coming close to time, in your desire, when it rises, When it's a feeling and an impetus to express something, let it. Surrender your control and your mental ideas of protection around it. If you're at ecstatic dance and you're feeling awkward and you're like, oh, but I want to dance this way, but I can't. Yes, you can. Give yourself permission. Because all the rest is just stories keeping you from who you truly are in expression. And expand. Thank you.